I will give the sequel to that story that that young man worked so hard on his rehab that he was standing in full lower extremity, what do you call it, replacements,
Yeah.
and saluted his what would you say it, his company when they came back from Iraq. He was standing there at attention. The human spirit, very powerful.
So we're starting on page 132, intellectual observation is ego.
Yes,
And it's your turn to read.
it is. Okay. Intellectual observation is ego after form. Wisdom is found before the formation of form. Ego is only what you think you are and what you think of life. Nothing more, nothing less. Our intellect and our wisdom, inner wisdom, our intellect and our inner wisdom should work together to create harmony in our lives. However, if the intellect lacks wisdom, chaos reigns. This is the state of the world today. Those who have found a balance between their intelligence and their innate wisdom are the lucky ones. As human beings, we must look closely at the relationship between our spiritual nature and our psychological nature. Here we will find the answers we seek to change the deplorable state of the world. Wow. You know, whenever I read this, I think the only thing that we can really start with is our own mental well-being before we go out and think we're going to do anything to
help others,
to help the world, right? But I'll leave it open to, you know, obviously whether it's a leader of, you know, we've had people like Stalin and Hitler and Idi Amin and people that they were bright sons of guns. They intellectually, or they couldn't have pulled off what they pulled off, but they lacking the wisdom, chaos reigns, and we see that so very often. So anyway, so I'll leave it to open to any comments before we go forward.
You know, it says it itself, you know, but I do think that's very important to understand that our spiritual nature and our psychological nature are us in two different manifestations of the energy of mind, and so it's not that we have to make one or the other better or work. We just have to acknowledge and realize that harmony, you know, accepting with some degree of humility that wisdom is greater than our intellect.
Yes.
And looking in that direction, you know, just being open to the idea that, you know, if you don't have the answer, it doesn't mean you can't get the answer, but you can't figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and Sid even makes the point of psychological is the study of the soul.
Right.
We think of it as the intellect, you know, as psychological, but he even says that's the study of the soul, of the spirit, of the non. That's why we have psychosomatic, which is psycho is the spiritual aspect of being a human, and soma is the manifestation of it in form, is the body. So yeah, you're right. It does say it. If no one has any further comments, we can go forward.
Okay.
And is it your turn then, Judy?
My turn, yeah. The consciousness of humankind must be elevated. Only then, when the spiritual and physical realities are united, will we find the power and intelligence to guide us through life. Wisdom cleans the channels of your mind and brings sanity into your life. You must find it for yourself. Pure soul and pure consciousness can only temporarily be separated by the erroneous thoughts of humanity, because soul and consciousness are one and the same. Wisdom is divine nourishment for the soul. It is a God-given intelligence before the contamination of form or personal thought.
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
Makes me want to go to welding school if you can become a master welder and have this kind of wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I really love about this is that the idea that Sid always talks about the oneness,
Yeah.
and in the early days he used to talk about the oneness, the isness, and the allness.
Right.
But what he was talking about was exactly this: the idea that you can't, that our whole being, our whole creative world, the whole energy of all of life, is one.
Right.
And that we can fragment it with our thinking,
Right.
by creating little forms in our head, but we can't rely on that little fragment necessarily. We have to realize that no, there's the oneness, the importance of just seeing yourself connected in life, and not so many people who are insecure are just alienated. They feel alienated from other people, from life, and what they really alienated from is their soul.
Right.
It's that feeling of wholeness.
And that's a very painful feeling.
Yes.
When people generate that long enough, they go from depression to irritability to isolation to hopelessness to disconnectedness from themselves, from other people, from whatever they called God in the past. And they feel so alone that's when people are dangerous, because once they are in such pain, their life has no meaning. No one else's does either.
Yeah.
And that's why murder and suicide are so often connected, because they're in such pain and feeling so alone and angry that nobody's been able to give them the answer. and that's it's understandable, that's what's so, again, hopeful about bringing this understanding to younger people, where they don't have to be looking for it when they're that desperate.
Right.
I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but I think that's true, Judy, what you said.
I want to comment. I think that for veterans, if you open how do you call it, like a scale to check if you have PTSD or not, like the PSS or something. So you have alienation is one of the items. Okay, they ask you about feelings of alienation, and I think when people go through a traumatic event, a lot of the times they're going to go back to their lives, and I see it in the foundation all the time. They get disconnected from their families at first, and then their friends, because they feel misunderstood. And after a while, you become alienated. And I think the thing about what we're talking about here is that, look, I think as human beings, we need to feel connected. I think it's no wonder that the attachment theory is one of the most, it's a very common theory in psychology, because it's to be attached to something, to be connected, is a very basic human need. And I think that, so like in the foundation, we give people something to be connected to. But I think in here, what's important is that the understanding that if you connect to your wisdom, so you get a feeling that, again, you're part of the humankind, and then you feel connected again. And so that's why you're not going to hurt other people or hurt yourself, because you don't feel so alone anymore. You don't feel misunderstood. I think once you understand that what you're going through is like what everyone are going through in a way. So it's kind of like, it's like in the Corona, during this time of the Corona. So I spoke to people, and they're like, yeah, it feels shit. I don't have a job and everything. But I have to say that the fact that everyone are experiencing what I'm experiencing, makes it a little bit better.
Right.
So
And a lot of people are saying that.
yes, I think once you understand that you're suffering from your thinking is a condition that the entire humankind is suffering from. So it kind of makes it, you feel less, less alienated, less different. And, which is kind of like what you said, but I expanded on it.
Anyone else before we go forward?
One just to say real quick, it's just it's in italics. You must find it for yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Something about, I think that goes back to the believing and then knowing we talked about earlier. I think that's really, again, he points to that direction about really a part of you really truly knowing the truth of it.
Right. Sid often said, you can lead the person to the door. You can't walk them through the door.
Yeah.
And Ofer certainly pointed that out in his story that he knew he couldn't you can't drag somebody through the door. No. You just have to let them know that the door is there and wait for their wisdom to guide them, Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Did you want to go forward then, Brad?
Yeah, we're on top of 136, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. With wisdom, people see beyond the filters and biases of race and culture to realize the beauty in everyone. Such understanding enables people to stop fearing and distrusting those who are different, to see the commonality of human beings regardless of cultural differences. Wisdom applied to society will do more than anything else to halt the ethnic clashes and war the world suffers from today. And then wisdom is impersonal. Wisdom is immortal and unchangeable. Wisdom is the path to all spiritual understanding. Wisdom is also the path to all psychological understanding. Yeah, especially being a veteran myself, and working with warriors and veterans, I think I definitely know just for myself that war is something, I went through, and I wouldn't want that on anybody. And I think there's such hope in these 3 paragraphs here on 136.
Right.
Yeah.
So the understanding, to see that we're all connected, just like Judy, you said so beautifully there about we're all connected to everything. We're all, and just there's hope here. I really feel the hope of these 3 paragraphs, and of course the ones that follow. So.
Really is hope, isn't there? Yeah. In the research in Sapolsky's book Behave, he talks about how people presented with pictures, we immediately identify, is it an us or a them? Us or a them? Mm-hmm. And there are some people that don't identify an us or a them because they actually realize that we're all us's.
Yeah.
In different forms. We're all us's. And yet, in order for us to kill in war, and you guys know this better than I, you have to denigrate. You have to denigrate the other person. And, you wonder if we would have dropped a bomb on Berlin that killed 100,000 people that looked like us, whereas the people in Hiroshima didn't look like us. I wonder. I don't know. That's a question for another day. But the idea that we have to separate people, and it wasn't until about 1995 that the whole idea of moral injury was brought into the post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was brought about by, I don't think we've talked about this, have we? Was brought about a veteran from the World War II who came to a psychiatrist for the first time in 1995, 50 years after the war had ended. And he had been in battle, I think, on one of the islands in the Pacific, hand-to-hand combat. And he was out of ammunition, but with his bayonet, he killed a young Japanese soldier. and who was to him an it, a less than human. And that's what he had been taught. And he even sat on his body. Have I told this story? This is the beginning of moral injury in being recognized, at least outwardly being recognized. So he even sat on his body and ate his rations. And as he was getting up from having his lunch, sitting on the body of the man that he had just killed with his bayonet, as he got up, it moved the man slightly, and out of the man's pocket fell a picture of apparently his wife and baby boy. And suddenly, one of them, he realized, was one of us, a father with a young child, which he had back home. And he was tormented by that for 50 years before he went to the psychiatrist. And that whole idea of the seeing an us and a them. And I'm going to read this quote. I don't think I've read it before. I know being read something it's 6 lines, but I will tell you who the quote is from. It's from Albert Einstein, because Sid did not invent this stuff, this wisdom. It's been through the ages. And Albert Einstein wrote the following. Have I read this before? No. The human being is part, you wouldn't be surprised if at the end it said Sid Banks, but it doesn't. It says Albert Einstein. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest. Sound like separate reality? A kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of a prison for us, restricting us to our personal decisions and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I think Einstein knew about the oneness.
So is it?
Whose turn? David, Ofer?
Dave. No, maybe.
I think
it's Dave.
One of you.
Psychological nature and our spiritual.
Go ahead.
Again?
Yeah.
Cool. Our psychological nature and our spiritual nature are intertwined. And the more they are harmonized, the more contented we will be. Wisdom brings common sense to those who find it. The solution to outwardly complex problems created by misguided thoughts will not arise from complicated analytical theories, but will emerge as an insight wrapped in a blanket of simplicity. Trying to deal with marital problems, for example, using a variety of methods and techniques may meet with little or no success. However, when a lost couple find wisdom and understanding within their own consciousness, their marital problems will start to dissipate. Seek without seeking, for what you hope to attain is already within you.
Wow.
It's profound stuff, and it really does hit home. I sort of struggle to be able to sum up in my own words, but it's having been in that place where you're trying to resolve something by completely utilizing every ounce of your mental capacity to do it, and coming up short time and time again. it can be completely soul destroying.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you give yourself a break, or you just sort of give up for a moment, all of a sudden something pops to mind that wasn't there before, despite all your searching. And the more I've understood this, the more I've given up quicker. Doesn't mean to say that I don't get caught, that I don't get wrapped up in a load of analytical thought about how something should be. But when I catch on to the fact that that's what I'm doing, I then give myself a break and just see what comes, because normally it's there right under my nose. I just can't see it. It's like searching really hard for something in the fridge, and then giving up and then seeing it just as you're about to shut the door. It was there all the time. It's that same thing, really.
Well, it's so true. Sid says it's natural as breathing for us to get psychological viruses. We're going to get lost. It's not about perfection. We're going to fail miserably if we're going to put that bar of perfection up. But like you said, David, if we can more quickly realize when we're off course, we can avert a lot of crashes. We can avert a lot of crashes, and just to become more sensitive to losing a feeling state that we want to live in, of love and understanding. We get more sensitive to that. We give up quicker, and I agree. It's certainly been my journey over the last 37 years, which is still a journey.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting bit for me has been the sort of dark humor of a soldier. So when I've caught myself, rather than judge myself for getting wrapped up in a problem, I've just laughed at myself. And that sort of helps speed up the giving up a little bit. I've never been one for judging myself too harshly, and I'm lucky, I suppose, in that sense. But yeah, military humour and the ability to pull holes at your own expense has certainly helped me along this journey.
Well, Ofer, do you look in deep thought? Did you want to say anything before you share
I was actually listening. I think I think I'm gonna read the next paragraph.
Okay.
The final paragraph, actually. No, we still have more. Okay. We're in page 139, right? Yeah.
I think it's 140.
140. Okay.
That what you
you're right. Just read it right. That which you seek has no form. If you attempt to put a shape on the formless, you will never find it. Attempt to describe the formless with words, and the words turns the formless into form, creating an illusion and leading you further away from that which you seek. Should I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. There are many ways to find the inner wisdom that will lead you to a healthier state of mind. You must exercise your freedom of choice to decide on your own individual path. No matter which path you take, the wisdom you seek will always be found within the depths of your own consciousness.
Yeah.
Bless those who...
The point you were making earlier, Ofer.
What?
Which point, Judy?
Yeah.
The choice.
The choice. You must, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said that this is something I use all the time. You said that a few sessions ago. You talked about there's the phrase that Viktor Frankl says, that between stimuli and response, that in that space there lies freedom. So I think that the space is about when you're able to not react and just wait, just be there, just be present. Then you make that space bigger, and in that space, sometimes you can make another choice. And I think that's insight. That's when you can see that you don't have to go the usual path. You suddenly see something new. But I have to say that sometimes I think in this world, people are always looking for a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I realized that sometimes you have to look and wait for wisdom to come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for some people, that's the hard thing to do. I mean, it's always there, but for me, sometimes I need to look at things for a very long time before I can see them. Because thought has a very, thought, because it comes with emotion, it's very persuasive. And sometimes it's very hard to look beyond your thinking. So I think for me, it takes the important thing is to be able to rely on, and I think I would use the word faith, because you have to have faith in your wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're going to fall again into your thinking and try to lean on your thinking for answers, and that doesn't always work, as we already know.
And I think that's true. At the beginning, I think that for some point, up to some point, it is faith. And then I think there's a point where it stops being faith, and you know that it's there.
Yeah, but it's like you said, it's like flu. It's like a virus. You're always going to catch it. You're always, and I think, and for me, sometimes when I'm in the virus, okay, like it's like when I'm sick, I'm sure I'm going to die.
Right.
So, and I have to be careful that I won't. But so it's like, I think that the more you see it, the more you know it. But for me at least, that's my personal experience. When I get too much into my thinking, I forget.
Yeah.
Then I need to remind myself that it's like being in darkness for a very long time. So you forget there's a sun, it's there, but you don't know what it feels like. So, but the faith is that it's going to go back. So it is, but you still have to. I don't know. Maybe faith. It's the wrong word.
No. I think it's right. Yeah. Because when we're lost, we don't know. We don't experience the knowing anymore. So we have to rely on a faith that Yeah.
A lot of guys come to me after they get. I call it the big insight. When you get your first insight, when you understand, and then they go back and they have like a month or 2 or 3 months or a day, whatever, where their mind blows, and then they forget it, and they come back and they're like, but I got it, and now it's gone, and it's always, and every time you see it again, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
But it's like I think that's the thing, the concept, the fact that you can actually forget it, that you can actually see it one day and feel it and taste it and everything, and then you can forget it, and then you see it again, and then you forget it, and that movement is that. I think it's very special.
The one thing I say is that direction is the key. I think that one insight turns the boat around to a different direction from the outside in to the inside out. And then it's an incremental journey. But the bigger the ship, the longer it takes to turn the direction around. But sometimes that initial turn, like you said, is instantaneous. And then it's incremental from there. Judy, you had something.
Well, I was just going to say, to me, that goes back to gratitude, that, when you have an insight, it's better to just be grateful that this has occurred to you than to try to figure out, where did that come from? How do I get another one? And I think quite often we kind of kill our own firstborn in a way, because we suddenly have an insight, we find this moment of clarity, and then we think, oh, I better think this through. I've never had that thought before. Maybe it's wrong. And we start second guessing our own thinking, or then our mood lowers, and then we start losing faith that was truly an insight. And I think that's how people get away from it, that they start wondering about it, or trying to put it into words, or explain it to other people, or tell other people, oh, get this, I thought of this, and this is a wonderful idea. Well, it was wonderful for me. It may not mean anything to another person. It's not their insight. And so I think that for a lot, I think that's again where gratitude and satisfaction, you know, when something wonderful occurs to you, or when you have a moment of truth or a moment where your head clears and your spirits lift, is to find gratitude for that and embrace it and accept it and not question it and think about it too much.
Anyone else?
I think it also ties into with faith. I think it also ties what I hear you saying, Judy. It's about, I call that kind of almost grace.
Yeah.
It's like the satisfaction and the gratitude. For me, the word grace, I find at this point when I start to get these insights, when I just let the thinking settle and something shows up, and just saying, you know, to move forward with grace in a different place for me. But definitely bowing my head and saying thank you for it. I'll tell you.
Right.
And
Right.
not figuring it out like I used to so much.
Right.
That to me is the beauty of it. So yeah, thank you, Judy. That's great.
You know, and I'll just share this for what it's worth. It's because it's the way, an insight that I had recently that may or may not be true. But I used to think it was just about remembering and forgetting. But I think I see it a different way now. I think when we have that first insight, we get a glimpse that it's inside out, not outside in. But without knowing it, we have a whole pile over here of exceptions. Not if one of my children suddenly is killed in an accident. Not if my wife leaves me. Not if I get COVID. Not if I am suddenly on food stamps and having to stand in line for food. We have a whole, and they're not even anywhere to not if I don't have any arms or legs, or only have one extremity. They're not even close to that. And so, to me, rather than forgetting and remembering, I almost have seen it more that whenever I get caught, I've come up against one of those exceptions that I have unconsciously. This is not inside out. This is outside in. This has the power to take away my mental well-being. And the only thing that I found to do at those times is to get as quiet as possible and have kind of gratitude that I'm being given an opportunity to go through one or two more doors of those infinite doors of understanding that Mr. Banks used to talk about. And so to me, when I get caught, to see that as an opportunity allows me to get quieter sooner. That's just been helpful to me. You know. I would love at the end here, and then certainly if there's comments afterwards, I'd love to read this short poem. It's 12. Anyway, it's a short poem by a woman that Judy and I both interviewed, but she was my client. She had been depressed for 41 years. And she was in the group that I was in, and she was sent to me for electroshock therapy. And I said, before we do electroshock therapy, which does clear the slate sometimes, and people are very suicidal, and sometimes it was necessary, and it cleared the slate, and then things went in. But I said, before we do that, would you be willing to come to 3 group sessions and 1 more individual session? So she said yes. But it was her 3rd session in the group, and we were talking from the missing link. And she stood up at the end of it, and she screamed as loud as she could at everybody. And she said, does anybody know what he's talking about? And the group was over, and she went to her car, right? Now, I'm thinking, I don't want this. First of all, I could feel her pain, but also I don't want her driving her car in that state of mind, because she and others could get killed. So I quickly followed her to the car, and I knocked and said, please, you know. And I said, would you be willing to come into my office? It was 5 o'clock. It was the end of the day. And she said, yes. So we went into my office, and I called my wife, and I said, you know, I'm going to be here for a while, maybe a while. I'm going to be late for dinner. Didn't want you worrying about me. And I listened to her more than talked. for 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I, like Ofer, I got my few minutes in at the end to where I, after having listened for 2 hours, I just really said, now can I, before we stop, can I share what I do see? Because I know what's inside of you. So she was a religious person. She went to her church. And as she sat in church after leaving my office, here's what she wrote. It came to her. She wrote it down without, takes me 2 hours to rhyme 2 lines. I don't know about you guys. And that's with a thesaurus and a dictionary. And here's what she just wrote down. Claudia's poem. There is a universal truth that tells us of a gift. I feel like this is what we've been talking about. That dwells within us naturally to help us when we drift. When times of joy turn into woe, when wealth must cede to thrift, we need but turn inside to find a path back from the cliff. And yet we choose to hide ourselves in darkness and dismay, afraid what passing strangers might think of us today. We cover all our goodness up with heavy clouds of gray and build great walls around us, thus keeping life at bay. Why can't we trust in our own good? Why can't we shine each day? How is it that we constantly get lost along the way? When strength is there within us, how can we go astray? Perhaps we're blinded by the dust from our feet of clay. Just 2 stanzas left. When times are hard and fears are strong, we need to turn within to find the natural gift of health with which we all begin. We will find it underneath the shadow of our stubborn chin that's raised to justify our right to think we cannot win. We argue for our negatives and dwell upon our woe, not realizing that this holding on just helps it grow. We have to learn to recognize the thoughts that we bestow are simply dust we've trampled up, and we can let them go. Her depression score went from 37, which is in the suicidal range, to 2 the next morning. Wow. Wow.
There's a postscript to that story that's very sweet too. She had a husband who she'd gotten depressed shortly after they were married and had been deeply depressed and virtually non-functional for almost the entire 40 years of their marriage. And I videotaped this woman talking to Bill. We did a bunch of his clients before he moved to West Virginia, so we could use them as teaching opportunities. And so I was moved to ask her husband, who was sitting there with her quietly while she told her story, you know, I said, during that 40 years, did you ever feel hopeless? I mean, did you want to leave? You didn't have a wife really, you just, and he had this cute little smile and he said, no, I always knew she was in there somewhere.
I always knew she had potential. Wasn't that
she was in there somewhere?
In there somewhere, okay. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And whenever we would show that, people, when it was shortly afterwards, people always wanted to know if he had any brothers or first degree relatives. But he had waited for 41 years, and she had never cooked a meal in 41 years.
He did
everything. And he was a lawyer. He wanted to bring people. She said, you don't bring anybody to our home.
Right.
She slept sometimes up to 20 hours out of 24. And what he knew was that she was in there somewhere.
They were good. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
do you want to read the last page?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that, a lot of people don't even know this page is here, or they've read it and forgot it, because it does it does erase us's and thems.
Right.
Bless those who have sinned against you, for they have lost their way. Reach out your hand and help them to live a happy day. And the whole thing is that you can be abhorrent of the behavior of somebody who's lost without abhorring the person, knowing that person is lost. Only hurt people, to me.
Mhm.
The end. Anyone, final comments?
I want to comment something. When I did the program in London, so I had a supervision with Linda Plansky, and there was a group discussion, group supervision. I don't remember, and she asked me if I feel confident in my ability to help other people, and I said yes. And she said, "Wow, you're gonna fall on your face." And I was like, "Why are you saying that?" And she didn't explain, but I think what I realized during the years I've been doing it, I think for already 12 years. Wow, it's a long time. Oh no, less, 10 years. And I realized that for me, it's not about me. It's not about my knowledge. It's not about how much I know. And I see that as time moves along, I become a more, I don't know how to, what the word I'm using for. It's like humble.
Mhm.
I become more humble about everything, about the entire thing. I see that I'm more quiet, I'm more able to listen, and I'm less angry, and I have less resentment. And there was this guy where I work who was always making fun of what I do. And he was like, "What are you doing this nonsense for?" And at first I would get really offended. And then I stopped being offended because I understand that he's speaking out of this is the way he is, he doesn't understand. And he made a lot of people angry because they felt he's like, he's dissing them, and he's very high up, yeah. And actually yesterday he came and he asked me, "Listen, Ofer, maybe we should sit sometimes and talk." And I was like looking at him shocked. I was shocked. I was like, wow, and I was very surprised to see that even if it got to him, so something can be changed, and so I think the more I try to the less I try to teach everyone, and the less I actually do a better work. Because
Yeah.
I'm not trying too hard, and I don't really care if it works or not. I'm just doing my best all the time, and that's it. I forget about it, and it makes everything more graceful and easier. And that's the biggest present I got from it, at least for me.
No, I think that's beautiful, Ofer. The day, I've had many clients say the day you stopped being invested in me getting better, it allowed me to heal.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't invested in either trying to please you or to shove it up where the sun don't shine, as I did with most authority people.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. If the day that we're not invested, we just share the best we can, as lovingly as we can, without investment in changing anybody, with the best chance of people accessing the wisdom that they have within themselves. Does anybody want to comment further, or last thoughts on that, or elaborate? Or I think that's beautiful what you said.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And to me, again, it's that last poem that in Sid's little book says it all, that when you start to realize that it's not ever about me or anybody specifically, like, bless those who have sinned against you. It's not like they set out to sin against you. That's the best they can see it. And I think that the biggest thing that this has taught me is that there are no superior beings, that we're all rowing the same boat, and we've all been, everyone's been down, everyone's been up. And when I work with people now, as a result of, the insights that we've just shared, it's like talking to a friend, and knowing that maybe the friend's hurting right now, but they're fine. I just know that everybody's fine deep down, and so it doesn't frighten me anymore. I used to be frightened by people who were really upset or really strange or really, thinking wild thoughts. And now it just doesn't frighten me. I think, well, that's okay. That's just what they're thinking now. I see that you can't mess with the spirit. The spirit is formless. You can't change it. You can't touch it. But your personal mind could be anywhere, but it's not what we're talking to. We're not talking to the personal mind. Mm-hmm. We're talking deeper than that. We're trying to talk to that essence that's perfect.
It may be a good place to stop.
Okay.
Well, this has been wonderful, folks, being with you and doing this, and we'll see what happens. Huh?
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for this experience, I have to say. It was very special for me.
Yeah.
I actually do hope that some of the chapters won't be so good and we'll have to redo them.
Yeah. We can always have a reunion, or we could read another book.
Yeah.
So there's 6 of them. Anyway, it would be fun to get together again and see what we've gotten and see what we want to fix and so on.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
But,
Okay. Well, I'll order a Dropbox and we'll get this done.
turn it over to Jerry. Stop thinking about it.
Turn it over to Jerry and we'll get this done. Okay, folks. Any last comment?
No,
Okay.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you, guys. Love you all.
And,
See you soon.
spend time with you.